All right, welcome back for another Candlekeep Mystery. This one right here, you can see across the top is an adventure for fourth level characters. So here, the title of this one is A Deep and Creeping Darkness. Basically, what this one is about is an old lost mining town where everybody was killed by various different ways. And basically, what's happened, a group of evil fae have come into this area and killed anyone that was left after this mining accident. So that's just sort of a little brief summary of it. Let's look at the details right here. So they tell you that this book here came to Candlekeep with another group of adventures given to them by a villager who found it among her grandfather's old possessions. Now, her grandfather used to be a traveling bard in his youth and claims that he wrote it. So what this book talks about is the death of a mountain village called, looks like, Vermilion. So they tell you by slow, unknown means. Basically, what happened at this platinum mine, there was a big accident. And then soon afterwards, all the villagers just started to disappear one after another until either they were all dead, all gone, or just left this area entirely. So we got to figure out what happened to them here. So finding the book. They give you a good idea right here. The characters receive a contract from a mining and exploration group to find out what happened. Platinum's obviously worth a lot of money, very valuable right here. So they tell you through divination magic, the speculators learn that a book in Candlekeep holds clues to the mystery. They give the characters another book to use as a means of entrance, which you need to get into Candlekeep. And they tell you that the avowed aren't too fond about this other book, but it gets them in. So they tell you there's other ways they could find out about this book. Maybe they were looking up local legends, mining, something about individuals disappearing, whatever. But being hired by a mining group, I think is a great way to do this. So the book description here tells you it's thin, hardly has any wear at all. So this one's in good condition, unlike a lot of the others. And they tell you it's got some spelling errors and all that through it, nothing particular that's important. So they tell you this is a tale of tragedy and terror. Good way of putting it right there. So there's this mountain village where all the residents went missing over a course of several months. So inside, they tell you there's a series of little short stories and such. And it's really unclear as to whether this book is fictional or not. They tell you it seems like it's fact, but it's a little bit over dramatic, so it makes you wonder if somebody didn't maybe exaggerate a bit or something. So they tell you this is all about this platinum vein up here in this mine that was discovered. And of course, when you look at all the coins, platinum is extremely valuable. So they tell you here that the nearest civilized settlement is about 3 days' ride on horseback down the mountain from this mine. The inhabitants named in the book include a mayor. We'll actually see this mayor further along. The mayor's actually been changed into this evil fey creature. There's a kind and talented dwarf smith named Tormund, and his wife looks like Blinnis. So 70 years ago, there was an explosion in this mine. 60 miners were underground that day. It tells you that over 30 of them died. It took days and weeks to try and get in here and rescue these people. 16 came out alive, 11 of them never found. So a lot of people died in this event. In the wake of the catastrophe, soon afterwards, the villagers just started to vanish, often one at a time. No matter what they did to try and protect themselves, whether they slept with their weapons, slept in shifts, whatever, didn't matter. People just kept disappearing. So the village is still there, and of course, somebody'd like to know what happened to this. The people who escaped, somebody'd like to reopen the mine, whoever that may be, there's a list. So sketched out on the back of the last page of the book is a rough map of the village's location. There are directions to the closest mountain town called Marin. So we're going to see a little more about this mountain town that's close to it a little bit further along. So truth behind the tale, what really happened? This explosion killed a lot of people in the mine. And this disaster attracted some fey creatures called meanlocks. These things are attracted to trauma and tragedy and death. In other words, bad times is sort of what they're getting at. So these meanlocks appeared. So after a lot of people were killed in this accident, these things appear and they start to psychically torment and take the villagers one at a time. And they're actually able to transform villagers into other meanlocks. So some of them have been killed, some of them have been transformed. So back up here at the top, They tell you that the lingering fear and trauma of these miners is what attracted them. They tell you it was like a beacon. So again, they captured a lot of the villagers, transformed them into meanlocks, and the numbers just kept growing. So this bard here chronicled this story. The story really didn't draw the interest of anybody, so the book was forgotten. The granddaughter finds it later and turns it into Candlekeep. So that's where all this really got started for the adventurers. So what is this with this close nearby mountain town called Marin here? So they tell you that this town is the nearest point of civilization anywhere near the mine itself. They tell you there's a lot of mountain peaks and such in this area, very inhospitable place. But this town of Marin, that's 3 days' ride away, is a nice, prosperous town. They tell you it's very bustling. They tell you it's near the intersection of 3 roads, so there's a lot of people come through here. So it's actually a very good trading site. Now, they also tell you that 2 former residents of this mining town, Vermilion here, can share their experiences. So there's 2 people they definitely want to talk to, this Lucas guy and this Astra, which they're going to tell us about them here in just a second. So they talk about a stake in the mine. One thing you could do is the people who hire the adventurers might just give them a flat fee. Depending on what the DM wants, maybe they could give them a portion ownership in the mine. Maybe this could actually be a bit of a jumping off point for further adventures, however the DM wants to do it. So let's look here at these 2 people that the adventurers could get a little information from. First, they talk about the bored weasel. They tell you this is a dining area, and they give you a little background information, nothing important there. But the tavern keeper is one of these people they'd like to speak to, Lucas here. They tell you he's a patient guy. You can tell he's been a hard worker, and he lived in Vermilion, worked there as a miner, but luckily he wasn't underground when the accident happened. Now, they tell you that his wife, Lorna, died in the disaster. He left after her death, but before all the other villages started to disappear. He asked the adventurers if they traveled to the old mining town to place some flowers on his wife's grave. We'll see the graveyard there further along. He also wants them to find an old necklace of hers that's in the hollow of a tree in the center of the village. They can't miss it. So he's asking them to get it and return it to him. Lucas can give them a rough map of the village. We'll see what that village looks like on that map a little further along. So they give you some background information on him, nothing important there. Then in the central market, they tell you that this area here of the market's a very nice area, lots of tents, carts, wagons, and again, here's at the junction of 3 main roads and so on. So the market here is a very prosperous place. You can find jewelers, clothers, bankers, bakers, farmers, and so on down the line. Any common item the adventurers want or need, they can find it here. But here's this other person, Astra, a lawful good half-elf florist. So they give you a little description right here and tell you that Astra was a child when his family left this mining town. He was so young he doesn't remember the disaster, but he remembers people talking about strange whispers. They would just sort of hear things. Astra's family fled when all this started, and Astra's mother also told him about nightmares she used to have. These fey creatures can actually torment people with these nightmares. We'll see a lot more on that further along. So here's a picture of the second person right there. Nothing important in that. So the road to Vermilion. So let's say they leave this jumping off point right here. Now the road to Vermilion is a really bad one. They tell you it's really in disrepair. There are no guards. So as DM, you may want to throw in a nice little encounter with bandits at some point along the way, just to liven things up. But then eventually they're going to have to reach the mining town. Here it is down at the bottom. So it tells you when the characters reach the mining town, read this little box at the bottom. So they tell you it's very quiet. Wildlife and plants have retaken the place, so it's been deserted for a long time. They mention the lurking danger here. Again, a nest of meanlocks was drawn to the area by the mining disaster. The trauma and all the tragedy and death from it is what attracted them. So they tell you that most of the creatures returned to the Feywild, which is where they came from, after the village was empty. Again, they either killed everybody, kidnapped them, turned them into more meanlocks, or everybody left eventually. So eventually there was nobody left, and most of them went back. But 6 meanlocks did not return to the Fey. They are still here. They're waiting to prey on other lost travelers, which might come about this way. They tell you that because of their psychic abilities, they will be immediately aware of the presence of anybody coming into this town, and they're going to start to stalk them at night just as soon as they can. The mean locks of Vermilion include 3 that spawned after the disaster in the mine, 2 that were once villagers. We'll see one of them's the mayor, and one that was a traveling merchant that came about further along after the place had been deserted. He decided he'd check the place out, and they got him right there. So here's the little list of the mean locks right there. 3 of them like to remain really in the mine, and 3 of them out in the town. So they tell you here as the party makes its way through the village, the mean locks try to remain unseen. Remember that these mean locks are really smart, so play them with a high intelligence. They want to hide out and they want to psychically haunt the characters, causing hallucinations. So if you want, you can pick one character and really pick on him, or have it happen to everybody, however the DM wants. So they tell you what happens with these hallucinations. Characters see things moving out of the corner of their eyes, and when they turn to look, nothing's there. They sometimes hear a whispering voice. They might hear a shriek. They might think they see shadows following them. If they look at their reflection in any way, they might see a lost loved one or a hated enemy, wherever the DM wants. And they just can't shake the feeling they're being watched. So do everything you can as DM to really creep out the players with this and come up with other hallucinations, anything that you want. They mention nightmares. Anybody sleeping in the village is going to be inflicted by the nightmares from these mean locks. They tell you that characters dream of being trapped, suffocating, and so on down the line. And anytime they have a long rest, they're going to have to make a DC 13 wisdom save against these nightmares, or suffer 1 level of exhaustion. So this could build up really quick. Places of interest. They're going to mention most of the buildings here contain nothing. So with most all that's left of this little mining town, there's really not much of anything to see. But there are a few little points of interest. Like they're going to look at the mayor's house. This tree. This is where one of the people who used to live here has asked the characters to return a locket from this tree that belonged to his wife. We see the graveyard over here, the road to the mine, which is nearby, and just a couple little houses or whatever down here they want to look at. So starting with V1 right here, the wand and hammer. They tell you there's a wand crossed with a blacksmith's hammer, so they know there's going to be something in here, has something to at least do with a blacksmith. So they tell you, like these other buildings, very dusty, very ran down. There's a forge in here, and the guy that used to own this place left and abandoned it in a hurry. They do mention some treasure. With a DC 13 intel, somebody might see a false panel in the corner of a floor in the building. In that little panel underneath it's a steel shield with little platinum designs on it, winding serpents and such, worth 50 gold. There's a couple of matching short swords. Again, it has some platinum designs on it. It's a platinum mine, so not surprising they have this here. Those are worth 25 gold. There's some iron bars, and if somebody gets a DC 18 intel or better, they might notice a platinum ring of swimming under a layer of dust under a workbench. So there's some nice little treasure lying around here. V2 is the stonemason's workshop, and what he was really busy making at the time were headstones. Remember, a lot of people were killed in that mining disaster. So they'll see blank headstones, and some of them, like this one down here at the bottom, that was just partially finished. It'll be pretty obvious these people seemed to leave in a hurry. When they discovered people were disappearing, that's exactly what they did. So then we got the mayor's house. That's up north central on that little map we just looked at. They tell you this house is in a little better shape, but it's still crumbling just like all the others here. So this used to belong to the mayor, which we're going to see further along was the last villager taken by the Meanlocks and has been changed into one of them. Again, they can torture people that they capture. We'll see this in the mine where they do this and change them into more Meanlocks. So more of those can be made from anybody they capture. Right out front of the mayor's house, there's a big tree. So this is the one that the person back in town told them about. Asked them to look in a hollow knot about 5 feet above the ground, and they're going to find this necklace. So they tell you it's a little platinum oval pendant on a thin chain, only worth 20 gold. And notice it says for Lorna. That's the woman, that's the wife of the guy in town who told you his wife was killed in that mining accident. So anybody who spoke to the Lucas guy knows of the necklace. It's easy to find. If they didn't speak to the guy, somebody going past the tree rolling a DC-15 intel check might just see it anyway. They mention a little about the graveyard. Very overgrown, been in disrepair for a long time. If the players look at the headstones, they'll notice a lot of the same dates are found on these tombstones. Those were the people killed in the mining disaster. Again, there was a big collapse and a lot of people died right there. They even mentioned that characters who look for Lorna's gravestone, again, that's the wife of the guy Lucas right there, can find it. And they tell you that if they placed flowers on the grave like the way he asked them to, they'll hear a soft sigh on the wind. DM may want to grant the characters some minor little benefit due to this right here. Things like that can be found in the DM's guide. So there's V6, a merchant's cart. Now what happened long after everybody was gone, a merchant decided to visit this area. He was taken by the Meanlocks about a year ago. They tell you that the characters will see the remains of a horse here. And in the cart, there's actually still some edible dried meats, little fabric, little wine, and so on down the line right there. So they may find this. And they tell you if somebody rolls a DC-15 Wisdom Survival check, they'll be able to see that this wagon and this dead horse have been here for maybe a year. So that's obvious. This guy came along later and something happened to them. Horse too. So they talk about running these Meanlocks, these evil fae that took the people from the town. They tell you they like to avoid bright light. They have disadvantage if they have to attack in a well-lit area, so they're not going to like that. They like to wait till nightfall. They want to avoid combat with any strong groups of characters in any way. They like to really divide people out, get them off one at a time. They do this by creating hallucinations to try and pull them away. And if they can isolate a character, they might be able to paralyze one of them, take them back to the nest, torture them for days, and change them into a Meanlock. If one of the parties is captured, don't forget that if the rest of the group gets to them quick enough, they could actually get to them before the transformation has been finished. So they tell you, don't forget these Meanlocks are very intelligent. They say play them as devious and very tricky little creatures right here. Hide them for as long as possible. And with all those hallucinations, just try and creep the party out best you can. So there's the mayor's old abandoned house, and here's that tree where that little trinket, that little locket, could be in that little hole right there. So they tell you back with the cart too, somebody rolls a DC-18 Wisdom, they'll notice the scratches and damage were caused by animals. DC-15 Intel will tell them that there's a little secret hidden compartment with 15 gold in it. So not much there at the cart, but a little. So they mentioned the tragic transformation of the mayor. Again, the mayor was the last person taken by the Meanlocks. The mayor was actually trying to piece this together. And we're going to see in the mayor's house here, the mayor was very close to figuring all this out. There are some good clues for the party to find over here in the mayor's house. We'll see a little bit further along. Now, even though the mayor's been changed into a Meanlock, it still has residual memories, so this Meanlock likes to lurk around and in the house. If the characters enter the mayor's house, it's going to attack at some point. Now, don't forget, they like to really attack at night if possible, and they like to pull people off one at a time. If somebody examines this dead Meanlock, well, all the clothes and such are torn away from what the individual used to wear, but there's still a ring on its finger that has this snowdrop blossom. And they're going to see this little symbol of a snowdrop blossom all throughout the town. Somebody clever might figure out, hey, this is sort of a symbol of the town. If this individual was wearing a ring of this town, they might figure out this used to be one of the town's people. So they tell you here during combat, they might actually notice the ring right here, so they don't have to actually kill them and get it off. They might be able to see it, and that'll give them a hint as to what happened with the mayor right there. The mayor's children would like to have this item returned to them. Something else you could add if you wanted. I'd pretty forget that. Mayor's house. So what's on the inside? Very dusty, very ran down. They tell you this was the center of government, and if the party splits up, Meanlock here. Again, the old Mayor Meanlock is going to attack at some point. They like to really split people up best they can. So they tell you the entryway is just real dusty right here. Not too much to see. And that's what you see in a lot of these rooms. H2, and here you can see the house right here. Not a lot, a couple little floors right here. But there's the big assembly room. Here we have it down here at the bottom. Lots of chairs, tomes, an old fireplace. Nothing special. They tell you there's a painting worth 2 gold. And actually a chunk of raw platinum sitting over here on the bookshelf worth 25 gold. H3 here was a little meeting room. There's an oil painting of the mayor. And they might actually notice that ring on the mayor's finger. They kill that Meanlock, they'll see that same ring. So there's a way you could tie them into the Meanlock, right? This tie the mayor in, that is, by that painting in this room. H4 up here was the dining room, so they tell you there's a bunch of chairs and dishes, nothing special there. H5 up here, the parlor. Again, chairs, fireplace, nothing there. All potential ambush places for the Mayor Meanlock if somebody separates. So they tell you H6 goes to the little upstairs landing, so there wasn't too much on the first floor right there. Up above, they got the daughter's bedroom, nothing special there. Again, everything's just falling apart. There's the master bedroom. Here they tell you this room belonged to the mayor. The characters can find some letters here. They'll see a wax seal on these envelopes, again, with that snowdrop blossom. Keep throwing that symbol out there at the characters, and then when they find that ring on that first Meanlock, probably the first one they'll kill, they might figure out this used to be a person who lived here. So also among these letters, there's a journal of the mayor. It talks about the disaster at the mine where all these people were killed. Players have probably heard of this already. They talk about the rescue efforts. They had to stop because cave-ins were occurring, so they couldn't get all these people out. The last few pages speak of the mayor's nightmares. Again, the Meanlocks are what was doing this. They talk about her creeping fear, soaked in sweat at night from all these nightmares, lingering screams, echoes. Again, these are all the hallucinations the Meanlock were causing on the mayor. So there's a library right here, a little brief description. And up here with the library, they tell you there's lots of books. They give you a little information. But what's important, one of the books lies open on the table. In the book, it talks about emotional trauma, nightmares, mysterious disappearances, and then look at this. Seemingly out of place is a book about the Feywild and creatures found there. And somebody had scribbled in a shaky handwriting, could this be the answer? So the characters should start to put together. All these nightmares are somehow tied to some Feywild creature. That's the Meanlocks. So they tell you these are very corrupted Fey. They manifest in areas of fear. Again, the people dying in the mine is what brought them. So they tell you Meanlocks, again, can create more Meanlocks by transforming humanoids. They do this by psychic torment. Again, it takes a day or so, whatever the DM wants if somebody in the group's been captured. They like to live below ground. They don't like the sunlight right there. They got some more information on those further along. So as the mayor just about put all this together, that's when the Meanlocks took the mayor and changed her into one. So there's another bedroom here, bedroom there. They had a little stuffed toy bugbear in one of them, nothing special there. Here's the mine. So basically there's 3 areas to explore: the town, the mayor's house, and the mine. And originally, really just what you see over here on the left side of this map is what was mined. All this other area magically appeared when the Meanlocks were attracted to this area by all the fear and trauma. The Meanlocks themselves didn't just appear, but magically these caverns did too. So all this was added later on with their appearance. So there's a little on the platinum mine, big old hole in the mountainside as you would expect. There's lots of wrecked carts, piles of rocks, beams of wood, and so on. Typical mining material. 30 feet in, it gets really dark. The entrance to the tunnel appears near the site of the accident, which was right up here at the very top of the map. So they don't have to go too far to find that. So there's the main tunnel. So they describe this area: dark, damp, dripping water, what you expect with a mine or typical cave. So they tell you there's lots of rubble. There's some branches off to the left and right as they go further ahead. The Meanlocks, remember, have been watching the characters. Because of their psychic abilities, they were aware just as soon as they came into this area. So if they haven't attacked the characters by now, the mayor probably definitely has, and any others, if they haven't, they're going to really increase the attacks if they enter this area here, which is the old abandoned mine, plus the caves of the Meanlocks. So they've been watching. They're going to escalate their torments. They're going to work as hard as they can to pull somebody off individually, maybe a small group, and that's when they're going to attack. So they tell you each character enters the mine must succeed on a DC 14 wisdom saving throw or have disadvantage on intel and wisdom checks because of these constant hallucinations, whispers, shifting movement, shadows, whatever that may be. So they look at the south wing. They tell you there's 3 swarms of bats here. So if the characters come into this area, those bats are going to attack. So that might be their first real combat in the cave region. So not much is mentioned on them. There's the northern wing, typical cave-like stuff. And then they get to the very northern part of the map. That's where that cave-in is at. So they tell you that if the characters try and dig out this area, they're going to make a dex saving throw, or big rocks are going to fall on them, doing bludgeoning damage. So they probably should figure out that's hopeless. No need in digging. But again, off to the right side of that map, this all magically appeared when the Meanlocks were attracted. So that's the entrance to their lair on the map at M5. So they tell you when they come into this new area, this area looks totally different than the rest of the mine. You can tell it wasn't cut with hammer and chisels and things such as that right there. The tunnels look very uniform, and there's a black moss covering them. If they scrape it off, they'll see the walls are very smooth. Again, not carved by picks. This area instantly manifested when these Meanlocks appeared with it. So they tell you that the moss muffles the echoes. They won't have any echoes here. They might get a little bit claustrophobic. A successful DC 14 intel check can reveal that the tunnels were not created by people. Again, something magical created these tunnels here. So that'll probably creep them out even more. So they tell you that if that same check succeeds by 4 more, they'll actually know enough to realize Meanlocks are here. So one thing will tell them this was magically created, another specifically Meanlocks. So M6 here is the Chamber of Weeping. They tell you that when a creature enters this area, tentacles of black moss sprout from the walls and try to grapple the individuals coming into this area. So they're going to need a DC 14, dex saving throw to avoid that. They tell you the tentacles don't do damage, but they also can't be damaged. It's going to take a dispel magic or something like that to cause them to disappear. The character who wanders into this cave alone will be attacked by this grappling group of tentacles and Meanlocks too. They tell you M7 is a big mossy maze. Here the Meanlocks try and separate people out with the hallucinations, luring them to areas and trying to pick them off one at a time. M8's got a few pools of water. They tell you smell the scent of minerals and such. Not much there. The water's really dark, looks like almost a black mirror, and they tell you that as DM you can throw in a black pudding into this area just to liven it up a little bit. Sounds like a good thing to do. Then there's M9. This is the main area. So they tell you that in this region, new scents greet them. There's the scent of decay. There's 3 pillars, moss-covered stone, 20 foot high in this area, and there's some stone slabs. These slabs are where people are tormented and changed into Meanlocks. So if the characters haven't encountered all the Meanlocks up to this point, all 6 of them, all that are remaining are going to attack here. So they tell you that they like to torture the people here that they capture. They like to paralyze them. And after a day or 2, they'll change them into a Meanlock. But again, any remaining Meanlocks are going to attack here. Now, they also have some clever little traps. They've set up dynamite traps. You don't hear about dynamite in D&D too often, but here you do. They tell you that someone in this area with an 18 wisdom perception check might notice what's happening. They might see a candle-like object next to all these pillars and see the stick of dynamite and recognize there's a fuse and that this is a trap. The Meanlocks will attack, and if they ever get down below 10 hit points, they will trigger the nearest explosive piece of dynamite. If all of those are set off, those columns, all 4 of them, will collapse, and this is likely to kill just about anybody in this area. It won't damage the Meanlocks because they can teleport out of this area. but the characters will probably take damage. And again, if all the roof collapse, that's maybe about 22 points of bludgeoning damage, probably going to start to kill a lot of people. Here they'll be trapped and somebody may have to dig them out, but they'll see lots of old remains of other bones, and there's a little bit of treasure. Look at this, a little, what's this, ivory drinking horn and goggles of night. And at the end they talk about the fate. Well, if the characters clear all these mean locks out, people will move back into this area. Again, as DM, you may actually get them a piece of the mind right there. And here they give you the information on the little mean locks, mean looking guys right here. So if you didn't have this information, they've provided it all for you. This is a great little adventure. I hope you enjoy it. Till next time, good luck and good gaming.